Have you ever woken up and thought, now that I finally have time, what do I really want to do? Maybe you've had a quiet itch for painting again, or you find yourself humming songs you used to play on the piano decades ago. Or maybe there's a dusty model train set in the attic just waiting for a second chance. If that sounds like you, or someone you know, you're not alone. Retirement isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of something incredibly personal and, often, deeply fulfilling. See, here's the truth no one tells you. When we retire, it's not just about stepping away from work. It's about stepping into something more meaningful. For some, that means rediscovering a childhood passion. For others, it means finally exploring interests that never fit into a busy life full of deadlines, meetings, and raising families. And here's the kicker, science backs this up. Studies have shown that engaging in hobbies and creative projects later in life not only improves cognitive function, but also contributes to emotional well-being. In fact, a 2021 study published in the Journal of Positive Psychology found that retirees who regularly engaged in passion projects reported higher life satisfaction and a reduced risk of depression. The reason is simple. When we do what we love, we feel more like ourselves. So in this video, we're diving into how you can reignite those long-lost interests, even if it's been decades since you last held a paintbrush or laced up your dancing shoes. We'll explore what makes passion projects so powerful, share real-life stories of people who've transformed their retirement years, and offer a few practical tips to help you start, or restart, your own creative journey. Before we keep going, I'd love your help with something. If you're enjoying this video so far, comment Y below. If not, comment N. It helps me know what's working and what to improve. And don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't yet. Now let's dive deeper. Let me tell you about Grace. Grace spent 35 years working as a school principal. She was excellent at her job, but it left her with little time for herself. When she retired, she felt excited but aimless. Then one day, while cleaning out her closet, she found her old knitting needles. Something clicked. She started knitting scarves and hats for her grandkids. Then she joined a local knitting club. Within a year, Grace had created an entire Etsy shop and donated over 100 handmade winter items to a local shelter. She told me, "I never expected knitting would give me so much purpose, but it's become the best part of my day." There's something magical about doing something with your hands, something you want to do, not have to do. Neuroscientists say these kinds of activities trigger the brain's reward centers. Dopamine, the feel-good chemical, gets released when we engage in things we find enjoyable. And guess what? You don't have to be good at it to feel the effects. That's what's so liberating. Whether it's woodworking, photography, gardening, or writing poetry, it's the doing that matters, not the outcome. Now I get it, starting again can feel intimidating. Maybe it's been years since you last picked up that camera. Maybe you think, I'm too old to learn something new. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Studies show that the adult brain retains neuroplasticity, the ability to learn and adapt, well into our 70s and 80s. In fact, learning something new later in life can help stave off cognitive decline and even improve memory. Let me share another story, this time about Joe. Joe was an accountant for most of his adult life, a numbers guy through and through. But after retirement, he joined a local improv comedy class on a dare from his granddaughter. At first, he felt ridiculous, but a few months in, he was performing at local community theaters and laughing more than he had in years. Joe says, "It reminded me that life isn't just about logic, it's also about letting loose." And that's the thing. Passion projects allow us to tap into parts of ourselves that have been quiet for too long. They give us joy, structure, and something to look forward to. That's important at any age, but especially during retirement when routines shift and we sometimes feel a little lost. So if you're wondering where to begin, start small. Think back to what used to light you up as a kid. Was it building model airplanes? Sketching comic strips? Cooking elaborate meals? Those old sparks often hide clues about what still brings you joy. And if nothing comes to mind right away, that's okay too. Retirement is a time of exploration. Try something you've never done before. Take a class, join a club, experiment with a new skill. You might just surprise yourself. In the next part of this video, we'll talk about some practical ways to get started, even if you feel rusty, nervous, or unsure. We'll also cover how to find local communities and online spaces where you can connect with others who share your interests, and why those connections can be just as fulfilling as the hobby itself. Trust me, whether you're picking up an old guitar or signing up for a pottery class, your next adventure could be just one small step away. Before we begin, I want to make one thing clear. This video is for informational purposes only and is based on publicly available research. Everyone's health is different, so always consult your doctor or a qualified healthcare provider before making any changes to your lifestyle, diet, or exercise routine. Scientific knowledge is always evolving, and what works for one person may not work for another. That said, let's get back to something that really matters, you. We talked about rediscovering what used to bring you joy. But what happens if nothing jumps out at you right away? That's more common than you might think. After years, sometimes decades, of focusing on family, work, or caregiving, our own passions can get buried under layers of responsibility. But the good news is, they never truly disappear. I met a man named Carlos who told me he honestly didn't know what his passion was anymore. He said, "I've been working my whole life. I never had time to think about what I liked." So he started experimenting. He tried photography, didn't love it. He joined a gardening group, enjoyed it, but didn't feel a spark. Then one day, he visited a local art museum and saw a woodworking exhibit. Something about it clicked. Long story short, he's now teaching beginner woodworking classes at his community center. He lights up when he talks about it. Here's what that story shows. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to start. And often, starting looks like dabbling, trying, failing, trying again. Retirement gives you something you may not have had in a long time: space. And with that space comes the freedom to rediscover who you are. But if you're still thinking, where do I even begin? Here are a few ideas. First, tap into your curiosity. That's one of the best places to start. Is there something you've always wanted to try, but never had the chance? Pottery? Learning a language? Playing the ukulele? You don't need to be perfect. In fact, beginner's mindset, approaching something new without fear of failure, is incredibly healthy. Psychologists say it keeps your brain flexible and reduces anxiety. You can also explore local opportunities. Most communities offer adult education classes, hobby meetups, or workshops. Check your local library, senior center, or community college. And if leaving the house isn't easy right now, the internet is filled with virtual classes and forums for just about every interest imaginable. There are online writing workshops, painting tutorials, cooking clubs, you name it. And don't underestimate the power of community. Joining a group or class does more than help you learn a skill. It helps you build relationships. Social connection is vital to our well-being, especially as we age. In fact, a landmark Harvard study on adult development found that strong social ties are one of the biggest predictors of happiness and longevity. Passion projects give you a reason to show up and connect with people who share your enthusiasm. Let me tell you about Helen. She joined a local bookbinding club at age 67, not knowing a thing about the craft. Within a few months, she had not only developed a new skill, but also found a circle of friends she now meets for coffee every Thursday. She says, "It's not just about the books, it's about feeling seen and heard." Another way to spark something inside you is to volunteer your time in a way that connects to your past passions. Maybe you used to love working with kids. Consider mentoring. Maybe you were a whiz with numbers. Help a local nonprofit with their books. Passion doesn't always have to be about creating something brand new. It can be about sharing what you already have inside you. Also, remember that your passion project doesn't need to be a huge commitment. It doesn't need to make money. It doesn't have to impress anyone. It just has to make you feel alive. A 15-minute painting session or a short story scribbled in a notebook can be just as meaningful as an elaborate quilt or a solo piano performance. And here's a little science to keep in your back pocket. Research from the Mayo Clinic shows that people who regularly engage in meaningful activities have lower levels of stress hormones and better immune function. Why? Because passion gives us purpose, and purpose is a key pillar of health. Now let's talk about fear, because it always shows up. Fear of not being good enough. Fear of failing. Fear of starting too late. But here's the thing, none of that matters. This chapter of your life isn't about winning awards. It's about joy, about expression, about doing something for you. And every time you show up to try, you're already succeeding. I remember one woman in her early 70s, her name was Denise, who started learning watercolor painting during the pandemic. She told me, "I was terrible at first, but it was the only thing that made the long days feel shorter." A year later, she's selling her work at local craft fairs, not because she planned to, but because people could feel the joy in her art. And that's what passion does. It gives us energy. It creates momentum. It reminds us that we're not done growing. We're just getting started in a new way. So if you're feeling unsure or rusty, that's okay. You're not alone. Every person who's ever picked up an old hobby or started a new one has felt that same nervous flutter. Just start with one small thing. One class, one afternoon, one idea. In the next part of this video, we'll talk about how to overcome some of the biggest challenges people face when pursuing their passion projects later in life, from physical limitations to confidence struggles, and how to keep going even when motivation dips. Because the truth is, the road to joy isn't always smooth, but it's always worth it. Let's be honest, starting something new or getting back into an old hobby can feel exciting at first. But somewhere along the way, challenges pop up. Maybe your hands aren't as steady as they used to be. Maybe you get frustrated more quickly. Or maybe that little voice in your head starts whispering, "What's the point?" If that sounds familiar, let me say this loud and clear. You are not alone, and you are not too old to grow, explore, or create. When we start rediscovering our passions in retirement, it's common to hit a few emotional or physical speed bumps. But that doesn't mean you have to stop. It just means you might need a slightly different route. Let's start with the physical side. As we age, our bodies naturally change. Arthritis, vision issues, reduced mobility, they can all make certain hobbies more difficult. But here's the good news. Nearly every passion project can be adapted. If you used to love painting but your grip isn't as strong, try digital art with a stylus. If you enjoyed hiking but your knees aren't cooperating, nature photography might bring you the same joy without the strain. You don't have to give up, you just need to adjust. I knew a man named Ed who had always loved woodworking. After a shoulder injury, he thought he'd have to give it up completely. But then he discovered miniature carving, smaller tools, more delicate work, and a pace that suited his body. He said, "It wasn't what I used to do, but it still gave me that feeling of being in the zone." That feeling, often called flow, is powerful. Psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who coined the term, described it as a state of deep focus and enjoyment where time seems to disappear. Engaging in hobbies that bring us into this state is linked to lower stress levels, better brain function, and even improved sleep. And guess what? Flow doesn't care how old you are. Now let's talk about confidence. So many people tell me, "I just don't think I'm creative," or "I've never been good at this kind of thing." But the truth is, creativity isn't something we have, it's something we practice. Just like building a muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. A woman named Trish shared her story with me recently. She had always dreamed of writing poetry, but never gave herself permission. In retirement, she joined a free online writing group. At first, she was shy about sharing her work. But week by week, she gained courage. She said, "It wasn't about being the best writer, it was about finally hearing my own voice." Now, she self-published a small book of poems and donates all the proceeds to local libraries. Sometimes the biggest hurdle isn't skill, it's self-belief. And if you've ever compared yourself to someone else and thought, "I'll never be that good," take a breath. This isn't a competition. Passion projects aren't about being the best, they're about being you. That's what makes them so freeing. You don't need permission. You don't need to monetize. You just need to follow what lights you up. But let's also be real, life gets in the way. There are days when energy is low. Family responsibilities, health appointments, or just plain old self-doubt can drain motivation. So here's a tip, build your passion project into your routine, even if it's just a few minutes a day. Treat it like a coffee break or a daily walk, something that belongs to you. One great strategy is what some call tiny habits. Stanford professor B.J. Fogg has done research on how small, consistent actions can lead to big changes. For example, instead of saying, "I'll paint for 2 hours every day," start with, "I'll open my sketchbook right after breakfast." Just that one action can trigger momentum, and momentum creates motivation. And speaking of habits, make it easy to start. Keep your materials accessible. Create a dedicated corner for your hobby. Write it in your calendar like an appointment. The fewer barriers between you and your creative time, the more likely you are to follow through. Another tip: celebrate progress, not perfection. Every finished knitting row, every photo snapped, every new recipe tested, that's a win. Track your journey if that helps you stay inspired. Take pictures, write journal entries, or share your work with a trusted friend or group. Seeing how far you've come can be the fuel you need to keep going. And remember, your passion can evolve. What starts as journaling might turn into storytelling. A love for birdwatching might blossom into wildlife photography. You don't have to stick with one thing forever. Let your curiosity guide you. One more story before we wrap this part up. There's a couple I met, Joan and Richard, who retired and moved to a small town. At first, they felt isolated, but then they started baking bread together. It became a ritual, a shared project they could both enjoy. Over time, they began teaching baking classes in their home, just for fun. They told me, this isn't just about the bread, it's about the joy it brings us and others. That's the heart of all this. Rediscovering your passion in retirement isn't just about filling time. It's about filling your life with purpose, with excitement, with you. It's about reconnecting with who you are outside of your past titles or responsibilities. So whether your joy comes from music, puzzles, model trains, storytelling, or something else entirely, know this: it matters. You matter. And the world is better when you bring your creativity into it. In our final section, we'll wrap things up with a few simple takeaways you can start today. We'll look at how to keep that spark alive long term, how to reframe aging as a time of expansion rather than limitation, and how even the smallest steps can lead to the biggest transformations. If you've made it this far, take a moment to appreciate yourself. Seriously, because showing up for your passions, your joy, your creativity, your sense of wonder, isn't just a hobby. It's a form of self-care. It's how we stay connected to who we truly are, especially in this new chapter of life called retirement. Now, let's take a step back and reflect on everything we've uncovered. You learned that passion doesn't vanish with age. It sometimes just takes a little digging to find again. Whether you're picking up an old instrument, dabbling in photography, or discovering birdwatching for the very first time, the important thing is that it matters to you. That feeling of being lit up, energized, and engaged, that's your compass. Follow it. We also talked about how trying something new, or revisiting an old love, doesn't require you to be great at it. That's the beauty of this stage of life. There's no pressure to monetize, impress, or achieve. The only person you need to satisfy is yourself. And that freedom, it's powerful. It lets you explore in a way that maybe you haven't done since you were a kid. And let's not forget the science behind it all. Engaging in creative, meaningful activities helps lower stress, boosts cognitive function, and improves mood. One recent study from the American Psychological Association even showed that older adults who engage in regular hobbies report significantly higher life satisfaction and lower rates of depression. It's not just fun, it's deeply good for your mental and physical health. So if you've been waiting for a sign to start, or to start again, this is it. You don't need to know all the steps. Just take the first one. Sign up for that class. Dig out those paints. Dust off that guitar. Even setting aside 15 minutes a day to explore something you love can change the rhythm of your entire week. Let me leave you with one more story. I met a woman named June who spent her entire career working in accounting. She was great at it, but never really passionate. After she retired, she decided to take a beginner's acting class at the local community center. She said, "I figured why not? I've always loved the theater." Fast forward a year, she's performed in 3 community plays and even written a few monologues of her own. "It's like I'm discovering parts of myself I didn't even know were there," she told me. That's what passion projects do. They reconnect us with forgotten dreams, uncover new talents, and remind us that life isn't winding down. It's unfolding in a new direction. And if you're thinking, "I still don't know what my passion is," that's perfectly okay. You don't have to know yet. Just keep your curiosity alive. Try different things. Pay attention to what makes time fly by. What gives you that warm feeling in your chest? What makes you smile even when no one's watching? That's your clue. Also, don't be afraid to pivot. Maybe you start knitting and realize it's not for you, but the people you meet in that knitting group, they introduce you to painting. Or you join a dance class and discover you love choreographing more than dancing. One thing leads to another. You don't need a map, you just need to keep moving forward. Here's one last scientific insight that always sticks with me. Researchers studying successful aging often cite the importance of three things: purpose, connection, and growth. Rediscovering your passion projects gives you all three. Purpose, because you're doing something that matters to you. Connection, because you're often sharing that passion with others. And growth, because every time you try something new, you stretch a little further into your own potential. So whether you're journaling, gardening, sculpting, coding, sewing, or singing, keep going. You're not just passing time, you're enriching it. You're not just filling space, you're creating something meaningful, no matter how small it might seem. And here's the best part, you inspire others by doing it. When younger people see someone in their 60s, 70s, or 80s fully immersed in something they love, it sends a powerful message that we never stop growing. That joy isn't reserved for youth. That this chapter can be one of the richest yet. So, what can you do today? Start with one small step. Make a list of 3 things you're curious about. Look up a class in your area. Set aside 20 minutes tomorrow just for yourself, no distractions. Let your joy take the driver's seat. We'd really love to hear from you. If you have any suggestions for future topics or questions you want answered, write to us in the comments below. We're here to help, and your input could inspire our next video. And if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss out on more practical tips for healthy aging. Here's to living your best life at any age. Go follow that spark. It's waiting for you.